have a good plan. Because yeah, no, I pulled a little bit of like, a TF2, if people know that video game, like where, one of the characters is asking like a support, like, are you sure this will work? And then the support replies, I have no idea. Like, I just kind of had the idea and then I just like punched through it, really just kind of kept punching forward until, things started to really mold together. If you can like actually sit down and give yourself some time in a day to take a couple hours to look up like business establishment, understanding like your company mission, your company values, your mantra, and developing sort of like an early press kit, something that you could provide to potential investors or employees to show like, hey, you do have a business plan, maybe you got a head, screwed on straight on your shoulders. And I'm convinced that I can work for you comfortably because you're a man with a plan. And, I can contribute my plans to that as well.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur, has grown several startups into seven and eight figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest, Kirk Allgeyer. And Kirk was, in his own words, was a bit of found high school to be a bit of a weird time because I think he did homeschool for a period of time, which is or part of the time that he was in high school did homeschool, part of the time he did it in public school. College, didn't quite know what he wanted to do, so studied a bit in networks and applied science, I believe, to do with software, and then still was I had a hard time figuring out exactly what he wanted to do in college or what he wanted to do after college, I guess. And so I found that he enjoyed playing video games at the time, switched degrees to allow him to work on game development, focusing on software and game development, found his passion and drive there, and decided he wanted to go work for himself. So started to try and figure out how to make that or find a business and a passion, and started to do that, doing what he does today, building a team, starting the business, getting the marketing and sales along with their product, and going from there. So with that much as an introduction and hopefully mostly accurate, welcome on the podcast, Kirk.
Hey, Devin, thanks for having me. And
absolutely,
yeah, pretty much got the summary down. Traditional education just didn't seem to be the way. So I finished what I had to, and then, I'm on the venture to make things happen for myself.
All right. Well, before we jump to the end of the end of the journey, let's start a bit at the beginning. So tell us how things kind of got started in high school for you.
Sure. So like you said, my education history was a bit of a roller coaster between public school and homeschool. I was in a program called K-12 Online. They may still be around. I'm not sure. It's been a few years. But I started my early high school, like 8th through 10th grade through there. And then, switched over to public high school at Dutch Fork High, for those who know that, for 11th through 12th grade. And it was a bit of an unusual time. I was a bit standoffish, more so then, because of my background, not being around people all day and having a lot of time to yourself to just do you and like make sure your tasks are done in a checklist. Like, it's a lot more straightforward than having, a structured schedule of classes and walking around the classrooms and, maybe hanging out with a couple of people that you don't really know day to day.
All right. No, it makes sense. And so, and I think no matter what your high school experience, for 95% of people, it's always going to be a bit of awkward or an interesting time of life. And everybody comes out with a different experience. And so you're saying, okay, went through and did partial homeschooling, did partial, public schooling. I'm still trying to figure out kind of where, what your place is in the world, so to speak, or what you want to do as you can or enter the working world or finishing up education. So you went off to college, and I think you started out with your first or initial degree, which was I think it was networks and applied science. Is that right?
Pretty close. It was networking and cybersecurity, which was an associate's in applied science. So
I was close. I give myself at least a B+ for getting it close.
Yeah, I'd give you 85%. Yeah.
So you say, okay, you start out in that degree and you're working through that. And if I remember kind of our conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, not putting words in your mouth, but that what just wasn't quite jiving with what you're wanting to do, or wasn't quite what you enjoyed or passionate about, and wasn't quite what it excited you. Is that right?
It did excite me on the onset. To give the TLDR, it was a choice I had between that or robotics. And my parents at the time were like, son, if you go into robotics, you're going to be working on the factory lines for some big company. You ain't going to do nothing exciting. So reluctantly, I took the networking cybersecurity version, but it opened the door to understanding like computers as a whole for me, just, how technology actually works and, what people do to make it do the things it does. So that kind of intrigue was where it all started. And then later on, after the program there, when I went to my to Midlands Tech for my associates in the field, I realized that it's going to be like the rest of my career what I was doing there. And most of what I was doing was like network configurations, just setting up equipment that basically makes devices like our phones or computers like talk to each other, telling them how to do that and then telling them what information needs to go where. And that coupled with the other work like troubleshooting, or maybe like, packet observation or traffic observation with packet sniffers for networks, I realized that this is probably going to be what I'm going to be doing from 9 to 5. And then I asked myself, is this really what I want to do with myself? And that question, the answer was no. And that's when I decided to make the pivot to pursue my bachelor's degree in software development, because that was the closest thing that I could get related to game development.
Oh, that makes sense. And so you're saying, hey, what is, I don't know if the advice was correct on robotics. It's probably a bit different today, but at least that was a perspective, tainted your view on it, decided to go the different direction, started out interesting, said, okay, do I really want to do this when I grow up, so to speak, or when I graduate and go into the working field, and said, okay. And I don't know, I still feel like sometimes I'm still figuring out what I want to do when I grow up. But, so you enter into, or you said, okay, we'll switch majors. We'll kind of go in a different direction. And as you're switching that, one question I had was, was it kind of one of those where you just all of a sudden one day says, okay, this is where I'm going, this is what I enjoy, and I'm going to switch? Or kind of how did you make that decision or transition that you're going to change the focus on what you're going to do?
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. The one major reason for the switch was my personal satisfaction as a career choice, because yes, cybersecurity and networking, for those who work in the field who might be listening to this now, know that it makes stupid amounts of money, and it does afford you certain clearances or benefits that other jobs might not have, that could lead to additional funds. And that sort of, looming spirit of it, I guess, follows me around in some, underhanded comments that I get whenever I see, family members commenting on some kind of big security breach on the news, saying that could have been you, son. You could have been up there making the big bucks, making the headlines. And it's a little irksome, but I've kind of gotten over it now, because I know I'm doing what I want to do with software development and game development and running my own company. And I don't really have regrets for switching.
I think that there is a lot of things they hit on there, and one of the big ones is there is a difference or trade-off. Just because you can do the field that is the job that may be the most profitable, or you may be the notoriety, or people know about you, or anything of that nature, doesn't always drive the passion. Now, if you're poor and don't have any money and you're eking by, that also is hard to be happy or be able to subsist. And so you're always looking to find the balance to where you can find something that you enjoy, you're passionate about. It provides a good lifestyle for what you're looking for. And if you can find that, then it definitely makes it an enjoyable path along the way. So now, as you said, okay, going to make that switch, find out, where that balance is, going to get the degree that facilitates that. And I'm also going to start to look to build my own company. How did you kind of get into, did you start building the company or the business while you were still in school? Did you wait till you graduate? Is it, where is it at today? And kind of how did you make that leap?
So it all started with how most things start, just an idea. I thought about what I would want to, name the business. I'm not sure. I usually try to structure things with a name before I go into the details about it. It could be a flaw in my design approach, but it's how I do things. So I wanted to theme it off of the core values that I'd wanted to have. So I started just spitballing some names to see if I could get the ball rolling with that. And I settled on Imagine Nexus, because I wanted it to be kind of a central next generation sort of game development company that really focused on creativity, the reliability of delivering those, creative experiences, and giving like access to people like in a community that revolves around that. And that's kind of where it started. It all started with that kind of idea, that kind of end goal. And from there, I couldn't do much in between the job that I was holding, still holding it now for the time, and my college work. So I ended up doing the best that I could to try and collect information and do more studies outside of my school. So I'd usually find myself on Google, like looking up YouTube videos on how to use like the Unity game engine, because I was most familiar with C# as a programming language, and that's what Unity primarily uses. So I found it to be a slightly easier transition than the other engines on the market. And
now as you're doing that, kind of give us, give us, and definitely insightful. So give us an idea, where's the business at today? Have you launched it? Have you provided services? Are you still bringing on clientele, hiring people out, doing it as a solo guy, or kind of where is that along the journey as far as where you're at today?
To be honest, it did start as the idea of a joint venture. I had a friend of mine who was interested in the idea of, being at the top and running your own company. We did have some heart-to-heart discussion about it as of late, and that venture never really went in that direction. So as of now, it's an independent venture, run and managed by me. I don't have the front-facing assets prepared quite yet. In the pursuit of getting this to work, I've been focusing more on the product, which is a prototype trading card game that I've been working on, and building it from the materials that I had collected throughout my bachelor's. So being that I'm the only person of the business so far, I've had to manage the disciplines involved, every discipline involved in the process, both in the business ownership, management, and the game development side, and focus on one at a time because I'm only one person. I have done some minor contracting for graphic designers or logo artists to help get my branding up. And I'm collaborating with a couple right now in order to get some finalized versions of a company logo that I can use for some front-facing assets like websites, a YouTube channel, maybe a Twitch podcast, that sort of thing. And yeah, just trying to move forward from there. And now that I've got the prototype version of my trading card game up and out, I'm making changes to that as I go, but I'm trying to redirect my efforts towards building, a company website to get some of that forward facing and some blogs that I can use to showcase my projects and what I plan for them.
Awesome. Well, definitely sounds like a lot of things in the work, a lot of opportunity, and a promising future. So with that, as that kind of brings things a bit to where things are at today, and even maybe a little bit looking into where you're headed, great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
That's a pretty good one. I have made a couple of questionable decisions. I suppose the worst decision that I've made to date was assuming that I could do everything myself, because I probably share this mentality with some of our listeners, or maybe some other people out there doing their own thing, but I get very tenuous when it comes to sharing my creative vision, and I like to collaborate with people who can also see it or also understand it. I'm all for promoting creativity like at the individual level, but in the same vein, I would like mine to be respected equally as much. So I'm a bit apprehensive to change or pivoting, but through some business management and ownership and game development courses that I've taken, I've been able to gain more knowledge and, really do some introspection on myself and why I held that belief. And I'm a bit more open to the idea of changes or pivots, like, on the fly for products for the greater good of seeing the vision through.
No, definitely. They're definitely, I think that is one of the hard things is, or for most entrepreneurs, and I'm certainly would let myself in there, is, first of all, realizing you can't do it all, or coming to grips, even if you could do it all, you don't have time to do it all, and you don't have the skill sets, and it's not going to get done, and it's going to limit the business. But then two, finding, or not only having that realization, but then actually starting to release the grip on the business, so to speak, and allow other people to come in and do other aspects of it, and giving them the trust and turning those over is a hard thing that I think you always have to go through. And it's one of those experiences, until you go through it, just figure it out. It's one where you're just having to, to go through those growth pains. Second question I always ask is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
If I could give them one piece of practical advice, have a good plan. Because I pulled a little bit of like, a TF2, if people know that video game, like where, one of the characters is asking like a support, like, are you sure this will work? And then the support replies, I have no idea. Like, I just kind of had the idea, and then I just like punched through it, really just kind of kept punching forward until, things started to really mold together. If you can like actually sit down and give yourself some time in a day to take a couple hours to look up like business establishment, understanding like your company mission, your company values, your mantra, and developing sort of like an early press kit, something that you could provide to potential investors or employees to show like, hey, you do have a business plan, maybe you got a head, screwed on straight on your shoulders, and I'm convinced that I can work for you comfortably because you're a man with a plan, and I can contribute my plans to that as well. So TLDR, just sit down, write things out, make sure that they're really what you want and what your vision is going to be, and then get used to sharing that with other communities and other networks. Find yourself people who are in the same vein, and don't be afraid of rejection, because that's just going to hold you back. Know that you're not everybody's person, and you're not going to please everyone, and that's okay. Just keep moving forward.
Well, definitely, I think it's great words of advice, and definitely things to keep in mind as if people starting and doing a small business or a startup. Well, as we wrap up the podcast, the people we want to reach out to you, they're, for game app development, for any other things, whether it's to be a customer, to be a client, to be an employee, to be an investor, to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, or find out more?
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter at Captain Kirk _030. And you can also find me as Kirk the Dude on Instagram to reach out. And if you want to check out some of my portfolio work, I've got a GitHub page at KDA Coding, and my LinkedIn page. My name's Kirk Allgeyer, so you can search me up over there. I'm an early software developer with some web development experience on the front end and some back end experience with C#, PHP, and other database structured languages like SQL and MySQL. So if you need somebody to make you a cool website or handle some database management, or just, simple structure and reorganization of applications, I might be your guy.
All right, sounds great, and definitely encourage people to reach out, make connections, and take advantage of some great talent and some good knowledge. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveguest.com and apply to be on the show. A couple more things as a listener. Make sure to click subscribe, share, leave a review, because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome episodes. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your business, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Kirk, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks for having me, Devin.